Welcome back to Healing Mindset. I am Nazish, and today we are exploring something intimate, familiar, and often overlooked: the kitchen as a place of emotional and spiritual nourishment. I am joined by Janet Irizarry, a visionary who has redefined how we think, we feel, and behave around food. After 3 decades in the restaurant world, she created My Mindful Kitchen, the three ingredient kitchen, a movement showing that even the simplest rituals at the table can ignite profound change. Her philosophy blends mindfulness, belonging, and the purpose into a way of living that turns every meal into a meaningful art of connection and care. So, if you have ever sensed that the kitchen is more than a place to cook, this conversation may awaken something deep within you. Janet, welcome to Healing Mindset. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here myself.
I am more than happy to have you here as well. So, what inspired you to create My Mindful Kitchen? And when did you first realize that kitchen could become a catalyst for a global change?
Well, my life has been around food. I was brought up in a family where my mom, kitchen was her happy place. And um, not realizing she taught me so much about food. So I've always been into food and I've also been a big advocate for the environment. I've always felt that I want to keep it better than or make sure it stays at least as good as it was when I grew up but keep it, so it's a great place to be for my kids and their grandkids. And somehow my mindful kitchen and uh, the whole concept actually intertwines all of that. As I went to raise my kids, I realized that I had not brought them up in the kitchen like my mother had. I I owned restaurants, and when you own restaurants, you're there 24/7, and I didn't realize how, I had neglected to bring my family into the kitchen and what they had missed until I actually read something that my son, who was 17 at the time, wrote, and it was something he was writing to get into colleges, and it said, "My mom owns 3 restaurants and my dad works for a major food company, yet there's never any food in the house or dinner on the table." And all of a sudden, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, "Wow." And I started thinking about how much my mother actually taught me through the times we spent in the kitchen. And I realized that values like protecting the environment, for one, and values of gratitude and appreciation and skills like um, responsibility and teamwork could all my mom taught me through being in the kitchen with her. And
Mhm.
that's how it all came together. So it's about creating quality time with your kids in the kitchen, and not dreading it, looking at it as something that is a great classroom.
That is beautiful, and it really shifts kitchen from routine into something intentional and alive. And it is so beautiful when you do it with your parents and your loved ones. It just makes it more alive, I must say.
Well, and I say we take it for granted. One of the things I do is I actually teach at the Culinary Institute of America. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a world renowned school for culinary. And I teach the students who are just coming in to most of them the restaurant world. There's so many other careers which we talk about. But what I have found, and I ask, why are you here and what's your best memory of food? And 9 out of 10 talk about experiences they had with their mom, their grandma, their aunt or uncle, and it's around the memories that can be made in the kitchen. So that says something.
That is actually a very that is something very close to everybody's heart, I must say.
Yeah, and I
So, yeah.
these days, people are rushed and there's so many things coming from all different directions. And I think the kitchen in many instances has become a place, I hate to use the word of dread. Like, you know, it's not the happy place that I grew up in. And I think it's time we sit back and think about it because I think with so much going on, we sometimes think that we can't control things in our life. Like we can't control our kids' values. We can't control food prices. We can't control climate change, policy changes, but we can, or at least feel more in control when you bring the three ingredients into the kitchen, which are mindfulness, belonging, and purpose.
That is very beautifully said, and I feel like many people will be able to, relate with it and feel more close to their kitchen and their memories with kitchen associated with it. Very beautifully said. So, when people first encountered the MMK method, which shift in perspective tends to surprise them the most?
How easy it is. Just by making mindful choices, food choices, it becomes, I always say, once a mindful foodie, always a mindful foodie. Because we're not trying to, first of all, the MMK method is something that should feel good. It's a positive approach, and it's not about feeling obligated to do anything. It's
Mhm.
not feeling that you have to be perfect. It once you realize, and we start the MMK method with simple awareness. What are you throwing out? What why? You know? How come? And awareness of how that food actually got from your the farm to your table. And when you realize everything that went into it and also what you're paying for it, all of a sudden you can't help but make changes that make a difference. And they people get surprised at how easy it is and actually how much money, I mean, can be saved. You are wasting less, you're using more of what you have, you're not overbuying. You're looking in your refrigerator and say, "Oh, let's get creative with the leftovers I have in here. What can I make with them?" And it actually becomes fun. It's positive. So it's not adding another thing to your plate. Pardon the pun, but
Yes, that is, and I feel like it is so relatable, and it is the thoughts you say is something that we all go through, but it is so relatable, and because many of our listeners or many of us as well see kitchen more as a chore before seeing it as a place for transformation. And listening to you, I feel like there is so much more to it.
oh, there definitely is. And so one of the things we just started incorporating is the thought of doing one small thing. That's
Uh huh.
where you start, doing one small thing. And in our newsletter that's going out this week, you know what our one small thing is? It's so easy. Next time you walk in your kitchen, think of a good memory. Think of some time that you had a great time around the table with your family, or it doesn't even have to be your table. It could be anyone else's table in, kitchen. But when you
Yes.
think about that, and all of a sudden you start looking at the whole space differently, and your energy changes. And I think if you walk into your kitchen, you go downstairs and it's, wherever it is, and you look at it and you say, "Oh my goodness, what a mess." Well, how are you gonna feel good there? And it could be a mess. But you know what? We see this Instagram and everyone has these picture perfect kitchens and wonderful meals. Well, you know what? Yeah, that's not real life. Um, if you look at my kitchen right now, it's not dirty. Is it messy? But it is lived in, I'll clean it.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's life.
And that exactly. And these are the few things that we all go through in our daily life, all feel in our daily life, and something like seeing the Instagram picture perfect kitchen, pick pat, and it just makes us feel like कि, why is it not there with us? And but listening to you, I feel like it is just a process.
Yeah. And also, like, speaking of, Instagram or you're listening to the news and wake up every morning, at least we do over like, I live in New York in the United States, and, you know, there's so much bad news. I don't turn on the TV anymore. I scroll through the things I wanna hear. I mean, I keep up to date, but to
Yeah.
start your day in that mode of negativity, wouldn't you rather do one small thing that's gonna make you feel good for the rest of the day and start off on a positive mode? And I just can't overstate how important it is to stop the guilt, the negativity of what you might be doing in your kitchen, what you might be buying, what you might be throwing out, what, what is it healthy? Is it, how are you feeding your family? You can't dwell on that. Do one small thing that's going to make you feel good around food. And maybe that is just planning dinner out of leftovers. Maybe it is getting your kids more involved in the kitchen. Maybe it is lighting a candle before dinner to make it more of a ritual. Maybe it is taking your kids to the farmer's market and letting them see where food comes from and starting a conversation or asking them to try something new. Those are little things that
Very,
add up, right?
yeah, yeah, very beautifully said. And you emphasized on these three ingredients, mindfulness, belonging, and purpose. How do these reshape the way people experience food?
Well, the mindfulness comes in awareness, awareness of your food choices and how it not just makes you feel physically, but how it makes you feel emotionally. Because when you feel guilty about throwing something out or where you feel guilty about not feeding your kids, when you bring more healthy food, when you bring more mindfulness into it, and once again, mindfulness and awareness are a big deal. When you start thinking about where your food actually came from and how many people it touched along the way and how there's what you buy affects them, that makes a difference. So, mindfulness, then belonging, we just talked about it. Belonging, the kitchen with as a place where families to gather, the friends to gather and to talk and feel like you're part of um, something, being able to connect with your family and on a bigger scale, belonging when you're buying from farmers market and making more mindful choices, you also can bring that out into the community, that
Yeah,
feeling. And then, of course, purpose. We all need a sense of purpose, and maybe the purpose is bringing your kids and using the kitchen as a place to teach them values. That's meaningful. Maybe it's a place where you can um, realize what you have and be grateful and waste less because you know that other people are not as fortunate as you. And maybe that's how you get involved in food insecurity and helping make sure others have as much as you do. Or maybe it's about protecting the environment. Those are all reasons for purpose. So, with your mindset with those three ingredients, you can put them together in all different ways and come up with so many different wonderful ways to feel good and make your life more meaningful, more sustainable, and more positive.
that is so beautifully said, and I love that. And emotional gaps often show up right on our plates without us realizing it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So then do you find out that one of these ingredients is especially missing in modern household, and how does that absence affect our relationship with food?
Oh, that's a great question. Uh, well, first of all, we'll start with mindfulness. I don't think people eat mindlessly. They grab things. Um,
Yeah.
they throw things away that they don't eat without thinking about how it could be used. So there's a million ways we're mindless in the kitchen. As far as belonging, mindless eating is or food choices are so big. Um, yeah, you get that one right.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, and then once again, I think they all fit in, and I think people aren't using them. Once again, the belonging is, missing out on dinner with the family. And then, of course, purpose is not realizing that there people know they need purpose, but they don't know where to find it.
Mm.
And believe it or not, we love to eat. Can you imagine to find purpose in eating? Wow, that's pretty cool in what you eat. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, this really highlights that food isn't just physical, it carries culture, emotion, and a lot of connection with it, which makes it so beautiful.
It absolutely does. And I always tell the story that my mother, I said, s- her kitchen was her happy place. I remember, I mean, in farm markets and just shopping in general, like, I just think about when I used to go with her to a farm market, and I do it now myself, and pick up that tomato that was just picked, and get the basil and start smelling it. That's just emotionally, I can't eat a tomato without thinking about my mom, and she's not around any for a long time, and, um but that's in my heart, and I know she's watching down on me and saying, "Oh, look at Janet loves that tomato just as much as I liked it." I taught her that, and that's a beautiful thing when you can think about people, you know
Yes, that is the real beauty of it. And and the way you put it, it makes it more and more beautiful. Trust me. And uh,
it's funny. Well, I was just gonna say, it's funny because people don't under I don't know, when someone does laundry and they get
yeah,
to the bottom of the laundry basket and every sock has a match, that great feeling you have, like, "Wow, everyone has a match," because that doesn't happen often. That's the same kind of joy you can get by keeping your broccoli fresh for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or making something out of stuff that was gonna go bad. It's those kind of moments you can have, and the kitchen is the place to do that. Who would ever think that? But, when I
yes,
have my broccoli last 2 or 3 weeks in the refrigerator because I took care of it and made sure it did, placed it in the right place, did some, little tiny things, I wanna call everyone I know and say, "Guess what? My broccoli was, I had it for 2.5 weeks, and it was wonderful." Those are that story.
that is absolutely beautiful. And I feel like a lot of people will be able to relate with it. And the examples you give is just so amazing. So your movement champions progress rather than perfection. How do you help people realize the pressure and the guilt that often surround cooking and food choices?
Well, once again, um, stay off Instagram. Just don't look at other people, what they're doing.
Yes.
Do for yourself and realize it's just small things that you can do to make a difference. And I think, it all goes back to, the MMK method, as I say, not about being perfect, not about being obligated, but always thinking positively about your food choices. It's just, you know, when I see people just and have fun with it, you know, basically
Yeah.
food is fun. This is not to take this, but it's not like changing a habit. It's not like, having to lose weight or having to um, you know, uh quit smoking. Those are things that are tough. This is not tough. And they happen gradually and just little tiny things just get embedded. And as I said before, once a mindful foodie, always a mindful foodie because it's embedded in you and you change these
Mm.
little things in increments. So it's really important.
That is such a refreshing approach. And especially in the world that pushes performance, even into the kitchen, and so much of Instagram and not so much of real around it. But this is such a refreshing perspective to all of it.
Yeah. If you think about bringing kids, that's what pushback I always get is like, you're talking about bringing my kids into the kitchen. That's the last thing I want to do because, it gets a little chaotic. But once again, mindset, it's not going to be perfect. But as time goes on, those kids are gonna learn skills that they need and skills that are gonna help you out in the kitchen. Those are the things like they'll wanna prepare and you teach them responsibilities of prepping and also cleaning up after, unloading the dishwashing washer, helping with groceries. Like it's it might seem like a big lift, which it really isn't if you do it incrementally, but
Mm.
the benefits are going to be grand.
They will be. Trust me, I believe it when you say it. And after listening to this, yes, they will be. So, food waste reduction is a huge part of your mission. How do mindful practice shift how people shop, cook, and store their food?
Ugh, so much so, like, the average person can reduce their food waste by at least 30%, which means that they're gonna also reduce their food bill. But, for those of people listening who may not realize, or think it's too big of a problem for them to handle on their own, food waste is one of the major contributors to climate change, and household food waste is the number one contributor to food in our landfills. So by making differences in your home, it actually ripples outward. And also, when you're teaching your kids, and that's the thing is you're starting at the bottom, they're learning the good habits and they're going to go back into out in the world and do the right thing. So that's how we're going to change things quickly by teaching our students or our kids. And I like to say students because I teach. But I'm so surprised when um, I talk to my students how many going into the culinary. They're 18 years old right now, and they're not aware of sustainability and practices. So that we can start teaching them at that age. We need to start teaching them
Yeah, when they're
when
quite young.
they're quite young. So it's a ripple effect.
That is so inspiring. Like small choices in the kitchen can ripple into both emotional and environmental impact.
Yes, absolutely.
Your work blends education, culinary artistry, and community activism. How do you see food becoming a getaway to mindful living in everyday life?
I say that the method I created, the MMK method, I hope it's not needed in 10, 20 years because it has to ripple out. And just as I said, starting with our young, that's the movement. That's just getting people to think different. Um, the people I hang out with and the families I interact with, they've grown up in a world of abundance, fully stocked shelves, fully stocked kitchens. And so it's easy to take things for granted. So, modeling to our kids, the difference is how we're going to help. I'd like to say mitigate. I mean, climate change is on the top of my mind. And I told you, mentioned at the beginning of this that I love the environment and I'm a hiker, a biker. I just love to breathe the fresh air. And that's what this whole mission started as. But when I realized that the kitchen is a tool to not only teach people to reduce their waste and be more, not teach, have them aware and just start naturally making a difference, I realized that it makes a better world because we can teach values and follow our values, align with our values. How many of us get so far away from our values in everyday life? And food and the kitchen, the food choices you make can help you align with your values, which is my main message. So it makes life better, not harder.
That is actually very true. So, Janet, for our listeners who want to dive deeper into my mindful kitchen or explore the three ingredient method, where can they find you and where can they connect with you?
Well, there's two great places. My Instagram account, which is MMK Method at MMK
Mm.
Method, is filled with daily inspiration and just a conversation about this. getting you in the mindful foodie frame of mind. And then my website, which is www.mymindfulkitchen.com. The best thing to do is to sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. And once again, we talk about basically what we're talking about here. And just to help people change their mindset and to get inspired and to get ideas and to get excited about mindfulness in the kitchen.
That is so wonderful. I will make sure to include all these details into the show notes so as many people can read, so many people can reach out to you. And this conversation with you, Janet, reminds us that kitchen isn't merely a place to prepare meals. It is a space where meaning, connection, and purpose can come alive. So, dear listeners, if tonight's insight resonated with you, start with one simple act. Slow down, notice, and choose with intention. Every meal is an opportunity to live your values. Let your kitchen become a place where gratitude grows, habit shifts, and mindful change truly begins. So, until next time, I am Nazish, and this is Healing Mindset.